Good morning, St. Francis, and good morning, people of God. It is Friday, the 11th day of July, 2025. It is Friday of the 14th week of the year, the 14th week in Ordinary Time. But today we also honor the memory of Saint Benedict, the founder of monasticism as we kind of know it today. Not the first monastic, not the first one to sort of move away from cities and to move into the countryside, and not necessarily live by himself, but live with others who wanted to move away from the country, from the cities and things like that too. There were other people throughout history, throughout early history of Christianity, who had done this before him. Some like Pachomius, who lived on a pillar in the middle of the desert and spewed forth wisdom, I guess, from the pillar and things like that, and people went to go see him a lot of times. And there were then people like the Cappadocians in Asia Minor, in Turkey, that basically went out into the mountains and carved little caves or found little caves to kind of live in, alone by themselves. But the idea of no human being is meant to live like an island and live alone kind of was revealed to them, and they needed to recognize the fact that maybe they could live solitarily, but live solitarily in community. And so Benedict begins this kind of pattern and writes a rule for how to live together as in a single-sex environment, and be able to work, to work and to pray, the ora et labora, to be able to allow the wisdom and the wonder and beauty of God to be able to be a single-minded focus for them, so that they could, again, live as the gospel, proclaims we should live. Now, again, they're living among themselves only and not in the world itself. So it might be good in one way for them to be able to do that. It could also raise a whole lot of other issues because they're all by themselves and not with other kinds of people and other kinds of things to deal with. So the removal of oneself from the world still is something today that a lot of people think is the best route for us. But Jesus doesn't often say that we should remove ourselves from the world totally. I mean, Jesus goes off to the mountains, and he goes, to other and to the deserts and things like that when he needs a break. And everybody needs that from time to time. But to remove yourself from creation and to remove yourself from the wonder and beauty of us who are part of creation might not always be, the best kind of pursuit, although it may fit, some people's spirituality and way of faith better than others. Benedict's sister Scholastica, who we remember in February, I think it is, again, also followed the model that Benedict set up, but now for women. So both male monastics under Benedict and female monastics under Scholastica become part, again, of our history and our tradition as a people of faith. So we remember all of those. Remember all Benedictines today of various shapes and styles. Again, they often didn't get along, and many of them broke away to found a stricter understanding of the rule or a lighter understanding of the rule and things like that, just like Franciscans did. So even when you set up with the best intentions, it doesn't always work out in continuity in the end. But the continuity is that the spirit of Benedict still, continues and still maintains itself. So we pray for all Benedictines of all shapes and sizes and of all pursuits, in the world today. Our reading for today, let's see, Genesis. Basically, the word comes to Jacob that Joseph has been found, and the invitation of Pharaoh for the family to move to Egypt, not just to give them food to take back to Israel, but to come back to Egypt because life is safer and life is better in Egypt. And Pharaoh creates a space within the kingdom for the people of Jacob's family in Israel to reside in and to live in. And Jacob is a little bit has trepidation before doing this. Should he do this? Should he not do this? But God again appears to Jacob and says, do this because I want this to happen. I will bring you to Egypt and I will take you back to Israel, once again. And so Jacob does. And there again, in the same way that his brothers had this wonderful emotional reunion with Joseph, so too now does Jacob have this wonderful emotional reunion with the son he thought was lost and is now found, and he can now reestablish the family ties again, with Joseph and the rest of the family now together. The reality is, again, that the place Goshen is set apart for the Israelites to settle in again, and as we may know, we should know, in the history of the house of Israel and of Israel itself, a Pharaoh will arise who knows nothing of Joseph and nothing of Joseph's background and why the Israelites are there in Egypt, and decides to get rid of them and sees them as a threat, enslaves them, all kinds of things. And so it does not work out as well. And so this is, again, always where is God's plan in this? I'll send you to Egypt, but then you'll come back again. But you'll come back again through a mighty deed of Exodus, but after you have have been oppressed and hunted down and pursued, and all kinds of terrible things are happening to you. So, it's always this interesting kind of story, within this, that God's promises are fulfilled, but not in the way that we often would expect them to be fulfilled. So again, it remains to be seen again how this narrative continues to unfold in the life of Joseph and the life of the rest of Israel. The gospel today from Matthew's Gospel, Matthew 10, again, speaks a lot about people not treating those who dare to follow the gospel in the best ways, and that people will, they will hunt you down, and they will take you to courts, and they'll do all kinds of terrible things to you, etc., etc., etc. But what's more important is how this gospel begins. Again, this whole sending out of this 12, and Jesus saying to them, you must be, again, as clever or even as cunning as serpents, and as meek or as mild as doves. That's how you're supposed to act within this world. Well, again, that line is another one of those lines that often gets overlooked and does not get enough focus. Again, in Genesis 1, or actually Genesis 3, the serpent is called the most cunning of all God's creatures. And that is why, again, the devil resides in the serpent, and that's why he's able to tempt Eve and then tempt Adam, and all kinds of bad things that happen because of that. And they eat a piece of fruit they weren't supposed to eat, and original sin, original sin, original sin, original sin. Well, again, if the serpent is evil, and the serpent is something to avoid, and the serpent causes destruction, why is Jesus telling the apostles to be as cunning or as wise or as clever or as whatever it is as serpents? Again, it helps us to understand a little bit better, that it isn't about, Satan, the devil, whatever it is, causing people to have all these terrible things happen to them. It is, again, about decisions and listening and understanding, why things are happening. The serpent is clever. The serpent is not evil. The serpent, though, uses that cleverness in a way that is not good, and that harms, just like any cleverness can do. We have to remember that. We have to understand that part of the story. Again, it isn't necessarily that there's a dark stain upon us, as sometimes it is often understood, but that it is, again, we can use our wisdom in ways that give life, and we use our wisdom in ways that take it away. The understanding of of the apostles being sent out is to make sure that their understanding is done in a way to meet the world where it is, and to show the world the truth that sometimes the world thinks it already knows, but is in desperate need of relearning again. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.